So Chris, thank you for joining and letting me pick your brain a little bit on some of this
Sure.
business mindset or just mindset in general. I know this has been a passionate topic of yours. What got you thinking about just mindset so much? Because you definitely seem to lean into that quite a bit through your events
Yeah,
and
it's
just, yeah.
yeah, it's definitely been something that I've personally focused on probably the last 5 years, and so much of it has been about coming out of owning the MSP, and you've been there too, Luis. Everything is such a tech focus for so many years. It was tech focus, tools, 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 tech, 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 and something that as I kind of worked on personal enrichment, growth, and all this different stuff. One of the things that I started to realize was I wasn't running business; I was running tech house. And so much of that evolution came from like the evolution towards a sales revenue focused business. That's a lot of what we talk about in seven figure MSP is getting your mind shifted around that. But then it's very lonely being an entrepreneur. A lot of people kind of don't think about it when they go into it, but you don't have especially being MSP, being as remote as we are, COVID hits, we got all these other things going on, and it's lonely and it's hard. And having your mind in the right space towards growth and personal enrichment and personal growth and all those other things is so key. So one of the things that I try and bring to the Facebook groups, to all the things that we do remote and digital, from Facebook to Instagram to LinkedIn to our email and nurture stuff, plus then extending that into our live events is how do we get you away from being, I don't want to say negative, but to flipping that mental side from maybe a place of static or even weakness to having that mental side being such a strength and that positivity for you. And that's a lot of what it's there for, because that brain power and that self-doubt and that imposter syndrome can be such a limiting belief, right? That's where so much of it comes from for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people also forget just how much the MSP context is born from a place of just negativity. People with problems, people with issues,
Yep.
frustration,
Yep.
just anger, urgency around things, and we're always sort of, you know, we're starting at 100, but you can only go down from there in terms of
Right. Yeah.
positivity. It seems like. And so this is something I think, is why people burn out in this industry, and you have to figure out a way to interrupt the circuits and sort of work on those bits. For me, it was kind of and I talked a bit about this in my own presentation that I had when I was doing the conference circuit back in the IT Glue days, and it was the nine tricks to building a $1.2 million MSP with a staff of two, because that's the number we'd hit with just two people. But it was sort of a daily commit. I had to reassess every day for what it was worth and just go out every day to try and be my best version of myself that day, and not let sort of the baggage of yesterday or the previous week or the client issue that we haven't been able to resolve and chase me throughout the weeks endlessly. And I'm sure you see this a lot with the people that you work with as well, Chris. No?
Yeah. Well, just what you said right there, a $1.2 million MSP with two people. The amount of MSPs that you would say that to, let's say if you're in a room of 1,000 MSPs, the amount of MSPs that would say immediately, you can't do that. You can't do, like, there's that immediate head trash reaction to, oh, I can't. And a lot of what we run into. So my mantra, concepts, growth, my ideas a lot the last few years have been, let's focus on cash flow. $250 a seat, $300 a seat. I don't care what country you're in. Let's use your currency. We were in Toronto a week and a half ago, and I stood up in front of the room and I said, "Hey, let's focus on $300 a seat." And they're like, "Oh, you can't do that in Canada." Like, immediately. So much of it, this is the industry kind of talking people into, you can't do this. You'll never be able to do this. You can't do this in your region. People won't pay that. When it's so much about how you do it and belief and structure and putting the right pieces in place and then believing it yourself. And you can do it if you really get that in place, but it's hard. And you're very accurate in that the market itself and the way that IT always was totally reactionary, and it's just shifted now. It's different. So we say this a lot in our program, things have changed. You have to be willing to change also.
Yeah. Now, there's obviously the folks that are business owners, and I think the general thinking around these types of patterns is that the owner is the one that has to drive the mindset. But I feel like even just from a personal salvation standpoint, I feel like more and more conversations are happening around, how do you guys, I see these sometimes in Slack and Discord and what have you. How are you taking a break from work? How are you resetting? And I feel like there was a stigma attached to that. That having a conversation about it comes from a place of weakness. And I think that's definitely evolving and changing towards a much more positive stance, which is, hey, this is actually super important to talk about. And we love hearing ideas from people on how to reset and interrupt, because I think it's the thing that keeps you a little bit sane. There's this idea that everybody lives with a certain level of delusion. I think to be able to live in this world of very many negative and difficult things to deal with, and so this is why some folks that have lower levels of delusion, maybe it's kind of like a reverse thing. But what are your thoughts on these sort of growing number of conversations around resetting and personal ability to keep on track with things?
I think it's absolutely essential. I love that it's a topic that you're bringing up. And one of the things that I'll go back to the revenue thing. If you're charging properly, you're actually making profit. You can afford to hire staff. You can afford to delegate properly, which means you then can dedicate time to yourself. Now, you also have to be willing to do that. You have to be willing to work on personal enrichment, personal growth, and that includes some stuff that I do and I encourage my team to do. We only have a 4 day work week at my company. So we're 4 10-hour days. And my team has Friday, Saturday, Sunday off every weekend, every single. So that's something that I put in across the company. But then also I encourage them to block their time and really work on focusing on email these hours and unplugging when you need to, and also talk about mental health days. Back to MSP land, that includes saying no sometimes, embracing your no, saying no, because you were talking about the personality of the MSP before, and so much of this is MSPs come from a place of tech, come from a place of I want to help people, a little bit of people pleaser mindset. So you put those couple things together, and if you can't say no, it's almost a recipe for insanity. So I think
Mm,
having some personal discipline, having some rules, but then also really saying, and I'm going to give you a great example and maybe a great tip towards saying no. My clients that are all MSPs, they have what we call a get out of bed number. We implore them to put in a good out of bed number, which means I will not take a client unless it's this much money. Even if it's a one person shop, it's $1,000, $1,500 a month. And that helps them to say no sometimes. It's hard initially because they're used to what they've always done. But as my head sales trainer, Cindy, says, do what you always did, get what you always got. So you have to evolve and grow a little bit to see some of those things get better for yourself.
yeah. I love that. The boundaries, I think we learn how to set boundaries. It's not something that a lot of people can do intrinsically well necessarily. And I think in a industry where we are very much in the hero mentality of saving the day, saying yes to everybody, helping every opportunity that needs help, I think it's even more important to be able to set those boundaries, just for even just a healthy lifestyle. I think because those there's an interesting conversation that I was having on LinkedIn the other day, because I heard somebody talk about a better work-life integration as opposed to work-life balance, because
So,
saying work-life balance suggests that those two things are in opposition to each other. But I've never thought of it like that. And certainly as a business owner, previously, I kind of your life is very much intermingled with your work, and I didn't feel like I wanted to separate the two. But integrating them successfully is also, I think, a task and an interesting thing to explore. But I was curious to ask you, what pivotal moment, maybe if you can recall one, that you've had that really got you, focused or thinking about this mindset development and this mindset growth.
so much of it actually was becoming a recovering MSP owner, actually. Um, I realized it was, I kind of want to say late in owning my company. So I sold my MSP for everybody that's listening mid 2015 and was happy with it. Wasn't bad, made pretty good money, wasn't, but if you're not, if you don't have that, man, I really like that work life integration too. I never thought of it that way, and I really like that a lot. I'm stealing that from here out, but I was kind of at the mercy of my company, and I think that's what so much of MSP is you're at the mercy of reaction and mission critical and all these different things. So coming out of selling that company, I kind of had a an awakening personally because I took some time off and I really considered and then ultimately started another company. And I said to myself, you know, what is wealth to me? And a lot of people consider wealth specifically just money. But to me, wealth was the ability to do basically time freedom was for me to do what I want when I want. And I made a personal promise to myself and to my wife that I'm going to start another company, but I'm never going to be locked again, and, meaning stuck down to a region. So seven figure MSP is all remote, all group, work from anywhere, clients can be anywhere. I also said to myself that I'm going to take time off for the company. I'm going to take time off for myself and for my family and my wife, etc. So I think for me, the realization of that was almost too late in terms of the MSP side because I I sold I had to sell it to realize it. So maybe not too late, but I think it's a good opportunity for everyone that's listening and to think about this. Of I have a chance to do this now, and ultimately, that's kind of what was my awakening.
Yeah, and I asked you that question simply so that people, maybe recognize an opportunity because, whether you're an MSP tech and you're switching jobs, or just having, a big life change, you're getting married and you kind of need to do a reset. I think all those little interesting opportunities are great for making a change or for adopting a new mindset. By the way, the year's almost over, so New Year's resolutions too are great for this. If somehow your changes are guardrailed by the new year, but let me get into this is another challenge, which is this idea of mindset versus skill set. And it's no secret, a lot of MSPs are smallish. The average MSP size is 7. The landscape nowadays is evolving even faster than ever before. We're always chasing our cybersecurity tails and trying to learn everything that's happening and staying on top of that. And we lean more into the I guess the technical side of things, especially if you're an owner operator, a technical owner operator. And so, what techniques have you found for people to I guess, you kind of just interrupt. You have to get away from the business for 2 minutes and think about the other stuff on purpose. But tell me a little bit about how you've seen people enact change in their own life and sort of making room for the mindset shift.
Yeah, it's a great topic. I love this. I think some of it, first thing to me, the biggest one is you have to be coachable. You have to be willing to take some feedback. Had a gentleman shoot me a DM a couple of weeks ago, and he was at my live event that you were at, Luis, that we saw each other at in Chicago. And he said, "Hey, I got a client that's asking me all these things, blah blah blah, and I want to get your feedback." So I gave him my feedback, and I was kind of flipped his perception. He's like, "Oh, I don't want any of that. I'm not very coachable. Never mind." So I think, I was almost like, why are you even asking? And somebody else commented on it because I put a post up around it. I didn't single the guy out, but put a post up kind of around being coachable. And he said they just want people ask for that because they just want validation of their own ideas. They're not looking to be coached. And I think that is such an important piece is you have to be open to not necessarily criticism, but at least a different viewpoint, because how are you ever going to if you have all the answers? So that's thing one. Thing two, to me, the challenge that I see with so many of the engineer mindset or the tech mindset owners is they're very much, no one can do it better than me. I control everything. That is a losing game. I don't care what business you're in. good example of this. My wife recently started a med spa, and her first order of business is, in fact, she called me today because she's interviewing for, going through 40 different candidates for an office manager, because I've kind of ingrained in her, you have to delegate or you're going to be at the mercy of it. You can't, I don't care how good you are, you you have to build a team, and because we didn't build a business to be a slave to, and that's a big challenge that I see people have. So I think my top two things on that are, you have to be coachable and you have to be open to delegation, and letting your, maybe three on that is, as you delegate, you have to enable your people and allow your people to fit. And it's hard because tech is like ones and zeros and so black and white, but leadership is not. And I think those things are key. And once you get through those couple, three things, you're going to start to see, and it's really funny because usually the most rigid people, as they come through this, some people go through it really quickly, some people it takes them a lot longer, but as they grow with this, they don't grow for like 3, 4, 5 years, and then all of a sudden they open their brain and open their mindset up to this coachable growth evolution, and then they have this explosive growth moment. They're like, I don't understand what happened, and it's really them enabling themselves.
Yeah. I think that, the status quo it has powerful inertia, and it's always tricky to interrupt that, and it takes a sort of a concerted effort or a
Yeah.
purposeful effort to be like, hey, maybe there is a better way. And I've seen what you're explaining a number of times, whether it's an MSP, sort of, hey, how did you do that with your MSP? And you sort of literally share the playbook. And we're like, my way is also good and it's working just fine for us. We'll just keep doing what we're doing. And that's when you realize, people are sometimes just more closed-minded than they appear to be. And I think the peer aspect of our industry is very powerful because, something that you shared on LinkedIn, I actually screenshot this. I'm going to call you out on this, Chris. One sec. Let me pull it up in my photos.
I love
because
it. I love it.
it was a post that you said, advice of the day: don't listen to people who have never done what you want to do. And I find that super interesting because I've always felt that, if you came from a different industry, if you did something else entirely in another life and now find yourself in the IT business, I feel like there are very transplantable mental models and skills and things that you can still have the third party perspective on that is a lot more broad than sort of the racing horse blinders that we often have when we're the ones in the problem. And so I was a little peeved by that post because I thought to myself, sometimes another person has a very, very wise thing to say, even if they've never done anything near or close to what we're trying to build here, but they might have something interesting to say. So defend
Well,
yourself.
yeah. Well, I think a couple things, posts, first of all of my posts are meant to be polarizing. So I'm glad it peeved you a little bit. So that's good. But a second part of it is, there's always a common sense applies approach to everything. And I think your concept there is very common sense applies. And I agree with that. But then there's also and this is kind of where this is geared at, is the internet guru, the online guru, the social media influencer, the person that comes and speaks on a stage and they've never done anything even remotely close to what qualifies to what they're teaching or training on. It's more of that. And there's definitely, I don't want to say a good chunk of it in this industry, but there's people that are getting on stage and talking about things that they probably shouldn't. And it's in every industry. It's not just the MSP industry, but there's people getting on stage and talking about things. First of all, on that, if you built a business, I don't care if it's an MSP, up and sold it, you definitely can go talk to anybody about selling your business at any part. There's total crossover there, total congruency there, because the same things happen. But if you've never been anything but employed by someone, and then you want to go tell MSPs how to grow and evolve, sell their businesses, I think that's specifically what that post is actually about. Is that some certain people are out there. It's not about one specific person, but there's people out there that are saying, "Hey, go do this, this, and this," when they in reality have never owned an MSP. They have no idea, and they're just a salesperson that got hired off the street. So I think it's common sense applies. Your mileage may vary. Very important concept, but
Yeah,
just be
I appreciate
careful
that.
of who you take from. And I totally agree with your viewpoint. And it's just and I'm glad you brought it up because it shows that we're both work.
Yeah. So moving on to this, we mentioned it briefly before. You know, there are sort of these recurring negative thought patterns. I think this is an ongoing challenge for people all throughout the the hierarchy of an MSP. I think owners go through it, techs go through it. I've sometimes called it, the ebb and flow of common sense because, as an MSP owner, sometimes you want to replace yourself or clone yourself,
Mhm.
and it's not always easy. And people go through their good days and their bad days, and sometimes people are making great decisions, and other times not so much. And I think in those troughs of negative thought patterns, it can be really, really tough for people. And Mark actually, Ignacio posted in the chat, some people sometimes want to sell their MSP because they're literally on the ledge of like, I just can't deal with this anymore. But there's the flip side of that, which is the fulfillment we get from actually helping people with their IT and their IT issues and so on. So how do you maintain a positive or productive mindset during those challenging times, especially? And maybe you have your own techniques or things that you do that you just want to share from your personal experience, because I realize this
Mhm.
is always different for each person.
Yeah. Um, so I think there's a couple things with that. I think thing number one is making sure that you absolutely have time for yourself and you make time for that personal enrichment. So many people, I'll go back again, they're just head down. Had a guy post in our internal clients group literally this week that he falls asleep at his desk every night. He gets up at 6 in the morning and falls asleep at his work desk at 11 p.m. That's not work life integration, right? It's not at all. That's letting your job completely dominate you and everything. So some discipline comes into play with that so much. And I will continue to die on the steeple of you have to charge the right amount in order for you to live a reasonable life and have some of those things in there. And so much of this industry for so long has been I'm so desperate for every job, every gig, every client, everything I'm doing that I'll say yes to everything at any rate, no matter what it costs. So putting all of those things in place, and for me, in our company, and we're fully subscription based, not a whole lot different than ScalePad and some of the other things that we've been involved in, at least you and I together. We're not any. They're all subscription based, and my stuff all started out with, if I want to get to this point, I have to have enough MRR. I have to have enough cash flow, so I don't have to be the one that has to do everything. And it started with that for me, and that was my mission statement personally and to myself. So I think for everyone that's there, you have to think about what is your personal mission statement? And I totally agree with helping people with IT and doing all those different things and having the fulfillment from that and all of that. But can you really fully help people the right way? And here's a good question. I actually asked during our onboarding and some of my live speaking events, I asked people, as an MSP, would you rather sell a good, the silver, gold, platinum, or the good, better, best? Would you rather sell the good, the better, or the best? If you had unlimited budget at every client, what would you sell? Every MSP is a good tech person. They all care. They all say, oh, well, we'd sell the best. Well, why don't you? Because we've let the client dictate all of it, which also dictates our mindset, our mood, how busy we are, how much we delegate, because it all is controlled by that. And it all starts with revenue and cash flow and that personal belief system, along with having a good mindset, which allows you. Yeah, I could go on all day about that, but that's really
Yeah.
my overall mindset with
Slippery
it.
slope. Yeah. When you let the client
Yes,
dictate.
yes,
Yeah, no doubt.
absolutely.
And there's a couple comments in the chat. I think you're on your phone, so you may not be seeing these, but I'll read them out. One of Brian Weiss says, obviously hire people smarter than you, and you hear this from some of the the big names. Steve Jobs used to say that. And he talked about hiring smart people, but then his real call to action was to actually let them do their job and figure things out, because I think part of the challenge that we have in our space is just that need for control, and it just shows
Mm-hmm.
up in some of the most interesting places and negative ways too. And I think
Yeah.
that's one thing to work conscientiously on figuring out how to let go of. But Brian's follow up comment is also true, which is like, how can you not have negative thoughts when your client's typical response to conversations is, well, what are we paying you for if stuff keeps breaking, or what are we paying you for if everything is running smoothly? And I think this harks back to, again, not letting the client set the expectations or dictate the situation. But I'm sure you hear this from your seven
Yeah.
figure MSP clients a lot as well.
Yeah. So much of this now. And Brian, it's a great comment and great question on that, because one of the things that we've actively seen and how we deal with that is, number one, we've shifted where the MSP actually sits. We've shifted the MSP from being a firefighter to being a risk prevention manager, and or even more of a risk manager. And it's so different because now our clients, and I'll give you a good example, we lead with cybersecurity. We actively focus on cybersecurity. Yes, we're doing all that same other stuff, but we actively sit there and say to a client, well, you all have business insurance, right? You all have health insurance, you have insurance, et cetera. What's the ROI on that? What's the ROI on perfect E&O coverage? Hopefully what? Hopefully zero. Hopefully I never have to use that. So we're shifting ourselves more to all this other stuff as an MSP comes included, but our core function is to manage the amount of risk that's out there and prepare for a hack, prepare for a breach. It's going to happen. We actively say to our clients now, you're going to get hacked. Things are going to break. Our job is to do our best now. And when you have a breach, it's to get you up as best as we can, as fast as we can, and to get somebody else, AKA the insurance company, to pay for it. So we actively say to them now during the sales process, what's the ROI on our coverage? Because, and where this came from, Brian, was me being asked this. I still remember sitting in a room of 15 orthopedic clinic doctors and having them say, we're not going to sign on. This HIPAA stuff is a joke. HIPAA's not real, right? We all remember that. HIPAA's a ghost. And he said to me, until one of my peers shows me that they got some ROI and you can show me some ROI on your service, I'm not going to spend a dollar. So I've spent the last 10 years literally trying to move the needle on MSP sales from we have to have an ROI to sell the service to, I'll tell you what's the ROI on my risk management service, Mr. Client? Hopefully it's zero. And then all the other stuff that we do comes along with it. Now, so much of that comes from shifting your sales process, shifting how you speak to them, reframing your mindset around MSP services, reframing your client's mindset to we're doing risk management now. You're going to get hacked. You're going to have these problems. So it's a different conversation versus that reactionary one. And I will 100% also state, if you are having the same conversations with your client that you had 10 years ago, which I will tell you, I know exactly what that conversation is. So does Luis. We've been down that road. If you haven't shifted that, you're going to get the same answers. So that's kind of that's a big answer to that, but that's where I go with it. Luis.
I love those analogies too, because I think you're right. I think the business ecosystem tries to always, what's the ROI on that? And it's almost like it's this ingrained reaction or a due diligence question that people are kind of trained to ask, but it's kind of the reverse. And if you think about even adding the color of, well, the average cost of recovering from a breach for a small business is X. You could even position that as like, well, your ROI on this actually is negative $3.31 million. And what we're trying to do is help you, prevent losing that amount of money by getting to zero. And so it's definitely a flip of the script. And I love that you're, helping your peeps
really,
go through
really,
that.
really quick on that. One thing I want to comment on that, just, really good question for Brian also on this. If you really want to open somebody's eyes, we do this exercise all the time in seven figure. Go, pick up the phone or walk in the door and talk to your decision maker at one of your clients and say, hey, I got some inside information. You guys are going to have a hack tomorrow. You guys are going to get breached. Saw some info on the dark web. You guys are going to have a hack. Half the money in your checking account is going to be gone tomorrow. what's your plan? And see what they have to say about that, because it's going to completely change their mindset from, oh, Brian's here just for tech, to, oh, I thought you were stopping the hacks. But they don't equate in their head hacking stops equals, or hacking equals my money's gone, because that's what the hackers are after now. And that's how you start to bridge that gap between they're only here to fix stuff and be firefighters to, okay, we got to do our best to get money stopped from being gone, or worse, when the money is gone, we got to make sure we get it back in some way.
Yeah, or worse, one of their clients' money, and then the reputational
Exactly.
component is
Exactly.
even worse than losing
Yep.
your own money. Like I'd rather they hack me than hack one of my clients, almost, because
Yep.
yeah,
Yep. Well, and it's tough in MSP land because you're kind of the supply chain now. You're like in the middle, and a lot of doors open. So be very careful about having your own insurance and your own liability insurance and checking all the boxes, because that stuff's really key.
yeah, no doubt. Well, I'm sure that you continue digging into this subject, continuing to find sources of influence and inspiration, to continue challenging your thought process on this. And I'm curious, what have been the influences and inspiration on this mindset stuff? Maybe drop us a couple of your favorite books or authors or speakers on the topic.
Yeah, I just got a new book. Hold on, let me look what that is. I read a lot. I definitely listen to a lot of podcasts. I read a lot. I'm on Twitter a lot, oddly enough. And what I've really worked on doing is actually taking inspiration outside of the MSP channel. I just, not like it's bad. I just don't want to be in an echo chamber. And that's
Yeah,
the thing that I've kind of seen happen in this industry a lot, is there's this echo chamber that, oh, this person thought of that, this person thought of that. So all of my staff, other than a couple of people, Cindy Phillips came from CMIT, and one of our closers came from working at an MSP. Everyone else is from outside the MSP industry. So, and we talk all the time, and we brainstorm and we work on things. And my mindset comes from personal growth, a lot of reading, a lot of podcasts, a lot of Twitter, looking at other industries. And then also it's making sure that I open up my staff to collaboration and don't dismiss their ideas and their thought process.
yeah, I love that. Just exposing yourself to outside things, and I'm not sure if you know the guy that did the Tom Cruise deep fakes, Miles Fisher. Super,
I did
super,
hear about this. Yeah.
super interesting guy. And he was interviewed by a couple of YouTubers that have sort of a video cast podcast thing. And Miles said this one thing that stuck with me so strongly, which was you can increase your surface area of luck if you are aware of more than what immediately surrounds you. I'll say that again. You can increase
Yeah.
your surface area of luck if you're aware of more than what immediately surrounds you. And it's so powerful because I think what you're saying is so true. How are other industries dealing with some of the similar challenges? What other mental models or ideas exist in a potentially completely different industry? How is company A in vertical B marketing this idea that could be perfectly applicable to how my MSP markets something, but we just haven't thought about it or gotten into it because we're just in that echo chamber. So I love that
Yeah.
idea of just thinking outside the
Yeah.
box.
Yeah, and also, don't be afraid to, mentors are key. I have 3 or 4 different mentors that I work with, not necessarily because I'm looking to do anything specific, but just in our discussion points and everything that we're doing, how they're growing and how they're evolving their businesses. I'm fortunate to be in Austin, Texas, so we have a pretty good entrepreneurship, leadership growth, startup community. But you can find that anywhere if you really look for it. So I think
Yeah.
that's also really key.
Yeah. Love that. All right. Let me flip the topic a bit. As companies grow, and a lot of MSPs do grow, and sometimes at a rate of growth that is difficult to manage. They are taking on more clients they can reasonably support sometimes, or not growing fast enough. But when they are growing, I find that there's an interesting maybe laggard on the mindset that happens. And I'll give you an example. I have often met MSP owners that are, a 20-person business doing $3-4 million that will still have a little meltdown about $100 a month cost for a subscription. And I find that
Mhm.
that is the mindset of the one person shop trying to protect their costs versus, the scales are changing. And I think sometimes the mindset doesn't follow. And I think this applies to a lot of different things. The monetary one is a simple example. And the cost of the monetary one is really interesting because what we do is we apply our own financial values to the thought process of the client. We, in other words, are our own worst enemy in allowing our clients to give us more money as we grow. And so, talk to me a little bit about your experiences through this scaling your mindset along with your company growth and not getting in your own way.
It's such an interesting topic because there is, and here's something you didn't touch on, but I see so much that there's some stigma in the MSP industry that I'm either a really good tech that charges very little because I care about people and I don't want to rip off my people, or I'm charging more money and I'm ripping everyone. And what I kind of don't understand it because every other area of business that we work in, the people that charge the most, you look at doctors, lawyers, CPAs, like any other professional services industry, the best ones charge the most and they're seen as great. But the MSP industry kind of has a stigma. And I think it kind of goes along with that to me because we're afraid to charge more because we don't want to look bad and we can't deliver as much. So you notice how my stuff keeps coming back to revenue and cash flow because in my mind, cash flow solves all problems. Like when you think about your business, if I was to double your MRR, your endpoint, you most of the problems that we have would go away. So it's allowing yourself to charge more so you can deliver services differently. I think it's for me, it all comes back to that. And I've watched probably 200 MSPs now in the last 2 years grow and evolve to doubling their recurring revenue in the last, 12 to 24 months. And coming out of that has made them much more open to change, not worried about those little things, that personal evolution, actually making money versus that freak out session of I'm always at the mercy of my client.
Yeah, so true. Well, and I think part of the challenge obviously is through that growth, through that change, there's going to be natural setbacks or failures. And I was watching this clip on TikTok, my favorite educational medium, in case anybody was wondering.
I'm
Of
in the same boat with you. I love TikTok for stuff like that. It's good for
Yeah, just the amount of like I think blowing up ideas or concepts that comes from 60-second videos is really interesting. But it was Joe Rogan talking about some other guy that was on some other podcast, and his way of responding to anything, even if it was negative, was to say good. Hey, we lost a client today. Good. And the reason why he did that was because it was kind of a trigger, an interrupt to try and think about the silver lining. It's like, okay, well, everything, there's an opportunity that is maybe born from every failure or every attempt at something that didn't go as well. And I'm curious if you've had some of those experiences or can give us an example of something that was maybe a failure, but your mindset helped shift it in towards a learning opportunity or even a success.
yeah. I literally every day, man. I'll tell you, I go really quickly. I didn't go to college. I never had any certifications of any sort. So I've been really, really self-taught. And a lot of people are like, okay, you're lucky. How did you're one of the rare beasts. How did you actually pull this off? And I straight up will say my superpower is execution. I come up with an idea and I'm not worried about what might fail or what might happen. We just go. And a great example is in the last 4 months, we added road shows. We had no real plans to do it as late as June. Actually, I'll say like the end of May. And we came up with the idea we wanted to get in front of more people to add road shows. So we added 7 road shows throughout the rest of 2023. We started with New Jersey. There was 8 people there. It was not fun. It was expensive. It was not great. And it was really one of those things of like, okay, that felt like a failure, but we're going to do better on the next one. And we're going to keep pushing forward and we're going to hit it. Well, we just had Toronto, and we couldn't have fit more people in. Like we couldn't fit more people in the room. We had 66 people there. We couldn't fit any more. So the mindset and the execution mindset just kind of and the growth mindset just pushed us through. I had to stay positive for my team, even though I was bummed out to take 3 people to New Jersey and 8 people showed up. But it was the first one, and it's not a whole lot different than how many of us have done a webinar to 0 people.
Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
Luis, you have. I know I have. But it's the first one, and you got to keep trucking and pushing yourself through it, and use it as practice and use it as evolution. And we had 35 people in Vancouver, and we had 60 plus people in Toronto, and now we're sold out the rest of the year. So it's exactly what that mindset thing does.
Yeah. And I think, we were talking about it briefly before you joined the call, and it's this idea of having a bias for action. And I realized I misquoted the quote that I gave. I said the quote was actually to have impatience with actions, but be patient with results. And I feel like there's nowhere that this is more true, especially in the realm of the sales and marketing changes that you're trying to implement
Yeah.
growth with. Marketing especially, it's so much about consistency, but I feel like mindset also is about some of those little habits that you create and doing them long enough that they become a second nature to how you interact with your team, how you interact with your
Yeah.
clients. And it's not enough to just go out and do it one time and hope for some massive pivot in the way your company is experiencing anything, to be honest. And so I just wanted to correct my quote there by restating that: impatience with actions, patience with results. Thanks for sharing that little bit of failure, which I think leads me to this next question, which is this idea of like, what have you how has business mindset, or how has your mindset work or research or thought process helped you carve out a more specific decision making process, especially where critical business decisions are concerned? And I ask this question because I feel like in the MSP industry, we're so tainted by the peer group, the echo chamber, like you talked about. You see these questions in the Facebook groups every week. A big decision you make in your MSP is like, what PSA should I use?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But somehow people just throw it out into the Facebook group and we'll just count the number of votes and then go with that because that's kind of what everybody's doing. And I feel there's a little bit of a layer of an onion there that needs to be peeled back and explore some of these critical decision making processes. But tell me about
Yeah.
yours.
Well, there's a couple different pieces to it. To me, there's 2 sides. There's the where am I going to take my clients and my beliefs side, and then there's also how am I making internal decisions around our trajectory and all that. So I'm gonna touch on both a little bit. Thing one is I have pretty strong beliefs on what I believe an MSP should be that I've kind of like been started as far back as 2007 for me, and how I think an MSP should be delivering. And I'm not afraid to put that out there, as you know that you see that. I'm also don't care what anybody thinks. That's probably the biggest factor. Is I'm not afraid to put all of my opinions out to the public, actively train on it, actively coach on it. That's what Seven Figure MSP is built on. And it's what all my speaking engagements are based on, and my live events, all that stuff. And hey, if you don't like it, that's fine. I'm not going to criticize you for not liking it, but I'm just going to keep on my path, and I believe that. So, and some of that is, it's crafted from various different areas. Some of it is industry, some of it is security, but a good chunk of it is actually coming from the insurance industry now and watching how they're getting prepared to handle MSP and where this is all going, especially with risk management. They've been dealing with risk management for about 200 years. So I'm watching them and learning. Then internally, I am definitely decision by committee, but I'm not afraid to. I never lead with an iron fist. I'll say that, but I'm not afraid to take input from my team. I surround myself with really strong people. Luis, you've met, I think, every one of my team members for the most part that are public facing, and I really work on hiring slow and getting rid of bad eggs if I have to. So much of it for me is that growth by group, and then I make the hard decision. It's especially hard for me because we're bootstrapped. We've never taken outside money. Everything's been growth, and it's hard to do that. So you got to really make sure you stick to your guns on a lot of things, especially financially, because it's really easy for wrong people. Our biggest expense is people. It's really easy to go down a bad spiral really fast. But we've hit 8 figures and growing, fully bootstrapped, and I think it's a lot of it is just me being open to learn and lead.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's the perfect segue to the last question, which is the cultivation of a team mindset. Because one thing is to overcome your own challenges and try to become more consistent in the way that you show up every day in the business for your clients and so on. But not everybody is drinking the same Kool-Aid at any given time. And so talk to me a bit about your team mindset building and or what you see MSPs doing that's been successful a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, so much of this is for me, it's being open to change. I also will state the most successful MSPs that I see out there are open to change. The decision makers specifically are open to evolution, growth, failure, willing to take risks. All those things are exactly what I put into play. I'm not perfect by any means, but I also have a very open door policy with my team. And if they have ideas and thoughts and different things, always call me, always come to me. And I never I never scream at them or yell at them or demean them. And I think that shows and that they're not afraid to. In fact, a good example of this, uh, Jordan Belfort is our keynote for our show in October. I don't know if you know that, but that is. And I know you guys are going to be there. Um, that came to me from Amanda, who's my VP of marketing, said, this would be really cool. Let's do we actually started with a Wolf of Wall Street theme, and then we couldn't do that because of trademarks. So we're doing like a spin-off on a Monopoly theme with Build Your Empire, and she picked Jordan Belfort. I completely bought into it. It's like green light. I love it. Let's go. Like there wasn't even any debate, even though he's not the cheapest guy to have in the room for sure. But she ran with it, built it from scratch, and it's flying. And that gave her ownership and growth and all those different things of the entire idea. So I think that has so much to do with it.
I remember seeing a comment about this in one of the Facebook groups, maybe, and it was somebody making a very negative comment about it. It's like, who would attend an event, that where the keynote is an ex criminal,
convicted felon,
convicted criminal.
Exactly. Yep.
And it made me think of a couple things. One, Kevin Mitnick is another example of that person.
I brought him up literally in that same post. I literally said, "What about Kevin
I didn't
Mitnick?"
even see that because I checked out of that post as soon as I saw that comment. But it made me think about so many different perspectives. And, we all watch, crime thrillers on TV. And it was funny because I was on vacation with my mom a couple weeks ago. I was taking her on her milestone birthday trip. And I said, I've been watching this amazing Spanish series on criminal activity. And I thought, I think I would be a great criminal if I ever needed to be. And I felt guilty for like 2 seconds, but then I realized there's just so much to learn, no matter whether the context is positive or negative. And it was a silly thing. It just spoke to closed-mindedness, I think, is what it was.
Yeah.
And that was clearly somebody who's just not going to take another opinion other than their own in those matters. But
and I'm in the same. But like I'll go back to, hey, you can. Most of my comments, people are like, "That's fine if you don't like it. Don't come. Like you don't have to come to my event." Some guy actually said, "This seems like a PR nightmare for this group," and I'm like, "It's not a PR nightmare. It's a guy speaking at my event. If you can't open your mind up to what did he learn, the guy is speaking on Microsoft's stage in front of their entire staff at their annual event. So it's exactly that. It's that open-mindedness, and that it should be like your overarching mindset as a leader and an owner of companies. I am not gonna I'm always going to have an open mind, and I can always learn. My cup is never full, and that's like one of the things. That's like my mantra that I really, really push on. My cup is shit. Ask my wife. My cup is empty. So it's one of those things where you got to always be open to that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Man, what a great conversation. I feel like we could go for another couple hours,
Oh, we totally could.
and I'm going to hold you to that. I'm going to bring you back one day when we have sort of a fun podcast studio that we can serve some bourbon at the same time as
Oh, I'm a
barbecue
big fan. We should
or
maybe we
something
should
like
do
that.
that. Maybe we should do a recording when we're in Fort Lauderdale. And
Well,
sorry for being in the car. I'm actually off on my Friday because we only have 4-day work weeks, and I'm actually driving from Chicago to Green Bay with some Boston friends because we're going to the Green Bay Packers game this weekend for the home.
yeah, rub it in, my friend. We will definitely have a version two. I think there's more to talk about in all of this. Thanks everybody for attending. We're just at the top of the hour here, so I know some folks had to jump off. But we'll post the recording. I'll send out a quick little blurb on Monday or Tuesday as we usually do. And next week, I believe we have Todd Kane. We're going to get him talking about some of the fun stuff that he's been developing in his own programs. He has his own podcast, and we'll get a little bit into that. Thanks, everybody, for joining. There was some good commentary in the chat. I appreciate everybody's engagement, and we'll see you all next week. Chris, thank you again so much. And
You got brother.
we'll see you very
Good
soon,
to see
I
you.
hope. All right.
Thank you. Yep. Bye bye.
All right. Cheers.